So what I've changed from before in doing these details is now I actually organize all my details in a scrapbook. So I'm going to load over here a sheet. You can see this is actually a layout scrapbook sheet that I've just edited, and you can see it actually has, in this case, this is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 details that I just described. So these details are loaded into a scrapbook, and this scrapbook actually works a lot like my detail template sheet. And so as an example, what I'll do is I will open up what is a detail template sheet if I was starting a new project. I go into my standards, into layout, templates, details, detail sheet, open. So you can see I've set up my detail sheets with automatic page numbering. All of the detail keys are also automatic page numbering. So if you change the sheet number for your next file, you just have to go in and change that number, which is nice. Makes it very simple, very easy. I have a detail grid on here. It's very simple layers. You can see that here. I have a detail notation layer and a SketchUp reference layer. Detail notation layer, SketchUp reference layer doesn't really matter much except if you were creating a new detail and adding new notation, for instance, on a detail you may never use again. Because when I bring them in for from the scrapbook, they will be placed on whichever layer I have selected. So I could pick either one for that case. So in this particular case, I'm looking at, I believe it was roof deck 1. You can see I've got my, and I'll expand this a little bit so you can see a little better. These are my details in the scrapbook. So if I go in here, I have, in this case, I've loaded up into my detail folder, exterior trim, and I'll just click on these. You can see it just goes through and you can see all the different details that are loaded into these files. And so I'm going to go back to the, I think it was deck 1. Then it becomes very easy. So now you've basically, going back to this sheet, which is a scrapbook sheet, what you do is, I have this set up similar with as a detail sheet. You can bring in your SketchUp file, so you would just do File, Import, and bring in that particular detail. And in this case, that one file appears 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. Then you size it to the size you want, which is based upon my detail sheet, which is this rectangle here. Then you simply add your notation and you call things out as to what they are. So as an example, I'll just zoom in here and you can see some of the notes. So we call out that top piece of wood railing as a 4x8 sloped top rail set at 42 inches above the deck. Then it talks about what each of these other elements that comprise the railing, gives you all the notation related to the roofing, every aspect you can see in this area. And you can see why it's important to show a detail like this from many different locations, because there's a lot of notation, you just can't fit all the information in one detail. So this particular detail is requiring 5 separate details to give all that information that he needs, he being the contractor, he or she. So back to a detail sheet, it becomes a very simple exercise once you have those scrapbooks and you've created your detail library. It becomes a very simple process. First time it takes a second to click, but you'll see eventually it starts to move, because this is a lot of information loaded into a layout file. So now it's got it. Whoop. Then you just drop it into place. And layout works really well because it actually will recognize not just the insertion point, but it'll recognize that corner. So I can just grab it and you can see it'll pop it right into place. And I'm kind of recreating the sheet that I just showed you before. Sometimes you have to deselect. And so a lot of times what I'll do is I will actually bring in several at a time. Then I'll go back and just position them into place. So you can see it's very simple once you have the library created to drag and drop those all into place. And what's nice when you're creating a detail sheet, you actually have your detail library all here ready to go. Now this is specifically only related to roofing details. I have lots of other scrapbooks that I also use. It's also one of the reasons that I typically do one layout file per detail sheet so that I know I'm working on a specific group of details because I like to keep them together. So for instance, in this case, I'd want to keep all the roof deck details somewhat related to any other roof decks that I might have, and this house actually has a couple. The other thing I would do is I would have then another one that might be exterior windows, exterior doors, and I'll go into my file, sorry, not that one, into file, edit preferences. Sorry, I still confuse those two. And if you go into folders, you go into your scrapbooks, and I will actually go in and I'll delete some of the scrapbooks that I'm looking at, not to get it heavy, and I'll just open those scrapbooks that I actually want to see in here. So as an example, if I don't want to see these, for instance, assemblies, I'm going to take out exterior trim, I'm going to take out roof details, I'm going to take out. But say I wanted to start doing, you can see they disappeared from the scrapbooks, but I want to add, because for some reason these were my last roofing details, but I've got some other exterior trim details that I want to add on this page just to fill it up. I will go through to my SketchUp standards. I will go to layout standards. Then I can see my scrapbooks. I have them all in separate folders, so if I go to details, now I can pick the folders I want. So I'll say I want some of my trim exterior details and go OK and close. And then you'll see in here all those other listed detail sheets are gone, but now I just have my exterior details. So I can now go back into here and grab additional details if I like and load them into my file. So to me, it's very good to keep these files separate because they do get very large. You can imagine if you just happen to have a sheet of 12 details, but you have to reference 12 different SketchUp files, it can get very large. So keeping things and performance working well, it's nice to keep your scrapbook list organized based upon the sheet you're working on. And it's very simple to go through the edit preferences folders list to edit which folders you're actually looking at. But that's the basic process. As I mentioned, we will go through this in much more detail in the upcoming book. I will also be having more than likely access to my scrapbooks and detail libraries. We are just structuring how that will work at this point. That way you might be able to purchase some details that are similar to what you're working on and be able to use them, edit them, modify them to specifics that you'll be working on. But that's the basic process. It makes it very fun, it's very detailed, and it's very fast.